stripe.
Welcome in, everybody, to College Football Week 6, Lock and Live with Uncle Phil and Smooth Andy. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this Saturday morning. Uncle Phil, Smooth Andy, how are you guys doing this morning?
Good, man. I'm pretty pumped up, man. 4 out of the past 5 weekends, crushed college football, ready to do it. NFL's been a different story, but college football is something that feels good for me for now. So I'm excited about it. Smooth Andy, what do you feel about today?
Well, I don't have a ton of indicators this week, as I mentioned to you earlier. So I feel like I have some lukewarm bets to make today, but not ones I love. But that's the way it is sometimes. A lot of competitive games with competitive betting. So
yeah.
Well, let's just get to it. Like you said, Uncle Phil, 4 of the 5 college football weekends were winning for you. Let's make it 5 out of 6. Where are you heading first?
Yeah, I'm first place I'm headed is College Station. My best bets are early games. So the people that are listening, hopefully get all this before the noon Eastern games kick off, because we're going to know our fate early today. I'm going to College Station, where Missouri's taking on Texas A&M. Missouri's not the dynamic team they have in the past, but Texas A&M is even worse. Texas A&M has the 16th worst offense in the SEC. Missouri has the 2nd best defense in the entire nation. Give me Missouri +2 to go down to Texas A&M and win what I think will be probably a low-scoring game. Next place we are going to Colorado Springs. We're watching service academies do a battle. Those interesting games are typically a little bit low-scoring. Never know who's going to win. This is a different year, I think. Navy comes in undefeated. Air Force is 1-3 this year. Navy has developed this new offense that is typically the offenses the two play are very similar, or they're year after year they're very similar, so that each team knows other team intimately and they're able to prepare for them. Navy's kind of opened it up a little bit this year. Their offense is a little bit different. They're doing some passing. They're just a really dynamic offense, and I really like them. And I think this is probably going to be one of those service academies of games that goes over the total, but I don't have as much faith in that, or at least as strong as lean on that one. But what I do like is I like Navy to win -10. Navy is undefeated against the spread, and I think they keep it going today. I think they punish Air Force. So give me Navy -10.
Love both of those. Looking forward to playing those, watching those, and it's always good to have some money on a service academy game. Smooth Andy, how about you? Where are you heading?
Well, speaking of service academy games, this isn't one of my bets today, but I did put it out on Twitter earlier in the week. I took the under 37 in Navy Air Force. Just blind service academy versus service academy, take the under, and you're going to win. There's 3 games that are going to be between service academies every year. You're probably going to win at least 2 of them. I don't think I've lost more than 1 out of those 3 on unders all in years. But my actual bets are going to be today. I've got Iowa against Ohio State. Everybody's on Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State is as good as they've been in the past. I think they're vulnerable. Iowa doesn't look particularly as good as they've been defensively, but their offense is a little better, which is a good thing. Although it'd be hard to be worse, to be honest, the way their offense was under Kirk Ferentz's son. So I've got them. I've got also a bet on Vanderbilt against Alabama. The theory being that a team that has won in a top 5 matchup, which is what happened last week with Alabama and Georgia. Georgia's still, by the way, in the top 5 after losing. they tend to not cover the next game. So obviously, I'm not expecting Vanderbilt to pull an upset, but I do expect them to cover, and that's the sort of the metric on that one. And finally, I've got an indicator telling me that I should bet on Florida State today. I've got 3 indicators actually that say I should bet on Florida State today. And this might be unprecedented for me. I'm actually going to bet on Clemson, even though my spreadsheet is telling me to go with FSU, because FSU obviously is a dumpster fire right now. The question is, are they going to say, okay, Clemson's in town. Let's show our fans that we still have some heart. I don't know that they have any left. They could have shown heart after losing to Georgia Tech, and they went out and lost to Boston College the next week. Last week they lost by, I think it was 30-something points to SMU. Now they're playing Clemson, and DJ Uiagalelei, with all of his limitations, he's injured. And the guy who's the backup is the guy who was the 3rd stringer last year, who finished the season for them and played in the bowl game where they got beat by Georgia 70-13 or something like that. Not particularly good. I actually have a friend who's an FSU fan, and her brother went to FSU also, and he knows somebody who's a player on the team. And he asked the guy, DJ's playing really bad. Is there somebody else in the quarterback room that's better? And he said, no, and it's not even close. DJ's by far the best quarterback that they have on that team, and he's out today. So I almost can imagine Clemson outscoring Florida State just when they're playing defense today. So we'll see. But I feel like this is a big trap, and I feel like a big square. But this one just feels like I can't just sit this one out and not take advantage of what I think is a pretty easy win for Clemson and cover. Clemson, I got them at -16. So that's my third one.
You're doing it because you're wise beyond your years. There you go. I love it.
Sweet. Well, let's get to some questions. Just a reminder to everyone in the audience, if you want to ask a question for Uncle Phil or Smooth Andy, wherever you're viewing this stream, just shoot a comment and it'll pop up and we'll get to your questions. We got one from Andreas on YouTube. Thanks for joining the stream. Any insight on Michigan and Washington?
Smooth Andy, do you have anything on this game?
I did, and then I didn't. I updated. I knew I was going to be kind of tight today with dropping the dogs off at the groomer today, and I dropped one off already. I've got another one coming up at 11. So I knew it was going to be kind of tight today. So I updated my spreadsheet yesterday, and at one point I think I had a bet on Washington. And when I updated this morning, just the percentages and the point spread movement and all that kind of stuff, everything just dropped out. So I've got nothing on it now. Gun to my head, though, I kind of think people, because Washington came from the Pac-10 or Pac-12, I just think people generally have a bias against them, and they might be better than Michigan. I think Michigan's not. The name is bigger than the quality of the team this year. So, but I do not have a bet on it.
Yeah, for me, I'm playing that game. It's in the notebook. I'm playing the side at least, so it's in the notebook. So I won't talk about that. But what I would do think, what I did have in my big book, I obviously trimmed this down from about 20 games that I really, really liked. It was tough to trim things down this week because I liked a lot of games. College football, I believe I picked the right games, but I think I will regret, just like I did last week. I think I had 8 games. Excuse me. I had 8 games on my notebook last week, and I went 5-3. And there were the last 3 games I took off were all winners, and I gave them out on the show last week. So you're welcome, America. Glad you guys won. Wish I had participated with you. But I think that this game, game's a low scoring game, and I look forward to go under the total on that one. It's a low total to begin with, but it just makes a lot of sense. Michigan is a one-dimensional team. And, granted, this is a rematch from last year, but there is nothing familiar about either one of these teams from last year. Both coaches are gone. Both quarterbacks are gone. It is a much different looking team on both sides of the ball. But again, I like this to be a low scoring game and go under the total.
Sweet. Next on the line, we're going to Sir Bradham from Twitter. He says Louisville -6.5 ? What do you guys think on that one?
What do you think, Smooth Andy?
Well, I'm checking my spreadsheet here. I know that's popped up at one point on my radar. Whether or not it's, I don't think it's going to be a bet this week. Yeah, I have one indicator on SMU, so slight lean on SMU, but not enough for me to bet. I'm really going to be interested in that game. I think that's a good game. SMU was impressive against FSU. I mean, I don't care how bad FSU is. If you beat FSU by 30 points, you have to be at least capable of doing that to do that. I mean, Boston College and Georgia Tech both won relatively narrowly compared to SMU. So I think SMU is a good team, and Louisville's kind of a sneaky good team that I'm just not sure about yet because they haven't really played a lot of people. So I'm just going to learn a lot from this game today. No bet on it. Looks like the bets are on Louisville. 62% at Don Best, 75% MGM. So public seems to be on Louisville, but again, I don't have anything personally. How about you?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to mention that we do have the StreamYard key. You can come up on StreamYard. You don't have to go on camera. You can keep your camera off and still ask questions. So certainly invite you guys to interact if you want to, rather than just typing questions. Those of you who want to ask, we kind of missed the days of when we had our Twitter Spaces, and I guess back when it was called Twitter. But we had our Twitter Spaces, and people could ask questions live. So please feel free to do so if you would like. If not, we certainly appreciate the questions as well. SMU was on my big board to take before I took it off, and it wasn't one that I had a high conviction on. But SMU looks like if I were playing that game, I'd play SMU plus 6.5.
Sweet. Next up, we got Carter from Twitter. Thoughts on South Carolina home dogs versus Ole Miss?
Yeah, it was the last, and I'm going to regret doing this, but it was the last pick that I took off my notebook and that I kept on the big board. I had South Carolina. Look, I just don't believe in Ole Miss. Ole Miss showed me who they were last week. They played a bunch of cupcakes, and then Kentucky went there, and Kentucky's defensive line is fantastic, and they just punched Ole Miss in the mouth. And that was not a fluke thing. They beat them the entire game, and I think South Carolina's got a great home field advantage. I think South Carolina goes in and get. I don't only think they cover. I think they probably win today, and I'm going to regret taking that one off the board. Smooth Andy, you think anything about that one?
I have a lean on South Carolina, but not enough to make the bet. That was the Ole Miss loss last week is called the Dream Crusher.
Yeah.
The dream of the undefeated season in the national championship. Not that they can't make the playoff anymore, but it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back after that. Some teams come in lethargic and kind of depressed about the loss last week. Some teams will come out fighting, and we'll see. But my lean is South Carolina, like you, but I'm not making a bet on it.
Yeah, like you, that's one of my things in my journal that I've kept for years is that when an undefeated team who has aspirations of national championship, the very first time they lose, and especially the later in the season it is, that is it, like to your point, it's a dream crusher. And they come out and typically they may win the next week, but they certainly don't cover the spread most of the time. What I found to be a really nice thing to do, which has even a higher rate of return, is that they come out really lethargic in the first half, and they spend the second half trying to catch up and usually come back and win. So it's the first half is typically a better bet than the entire game. So if you're playing it, I like it both ways, but maybe first half is good. It's a good opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good point on the first half. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Next up, we're going to Penny Talks. He's wondering about Duke +9. Anything from that one on your guys' radar?
There is no reason that Duke should be a 9-point underdog in that game. And that's why I'm staying away, because if I played that game, I'd have to hold my nose and take Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech, there's no way Georgia Tech should be favored by that much. The line is just telling you that something's wrong and that Georgia Tech, they're trying to get all this Duke money to come in, and Georgia Tech's probably going to cover the game. So I'm staying as far away as possible. But, there's a part of me that just says that Georgia Tech's going to win and they're going to cover.
Yeah, this one didn't even show up for me. I mean, there wasn't a single thing this thing set off at all. None of my metrics. It didn't hit anything. It didn't show up even for a minute and then disappear. It just nothing. So that is an interesting point you're making, though. It does look like they want. I mean, Duke's 5-0, and you get 9.5 points. Yeah, they're
no
begging.
way. No
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
This line just stinks the high of it.
Yeah, it smells funny. Yep.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm going to follow today because I'm with you guys. That's interesting. Chris Peters on Twitter. He says, "Any live bets today, Uncle Phil?"
Look, I mean, if it strikes me, I definitely will. I'm definitely watching things. Have the wall of TVs going today, and looking for games where I see some opportunity. I especially will be joining in some SEC games, be watching those. I'm really interested. I'll be watching, even though I don't have any bets on this on the notebook or otherwise, I'll probably be watching the UCF and Florida game, just because I feel like that one might be a good one to live bet on. Also, I don't have this in notebook. I think I'll probably regret this as well. It's one I took off. I took off Army off Tulsa. I think Army just destroys Tulsa. It's just a terrible team. And I think Army probably obliterates Tulsa today. And if Army does what I think they're going to do in the first quarter, I'll probably hammer that one. So, yeah. So I'll be watching.
I actually have that as well. It's just not one of my metrics. It's just something that I heard. I heard somebody make a persuasive argument about Army against Tulsa. I did look at Tulsa closely. I think they're 1-4 right now. And their 4 losses, they won one game, and it was against some cupcake at the beginning of the year, not even an FBS team, I don't think. They've been annihilated a few times. My only concern with it is that they gave up 150, 200 yards rushing in their losses, but they gave up like 400 plus yards passing. So they seem more susceptible to the pass. And obviously Army's going to be running the ball like crazy. Still, I like it, and I took it too. It's just not it's not going to show up on Twitter. It's just one of my little side bets that I liked. So
I'm going to be so jealous at the end of the day. Probably in about 3 hours. Not 3 hours from now, but 3 hours at 3:00 Eastern.
I would also advise anybody who's watching FSU Clemson. I think it's a 7:00 game tonight. Clemson annihilated NC State last week. And Dabo does not like Dave Duran, the coach of NC State. They don't like each other very much. He's not a big fan of Norvell either, but I would say Norvell's second least favorite for Dabo, opposing coach, because of a couple years ago during COVID, Clemson went down to Tallahassee, got their hotel rooms, and one of our backup offensive linemen tested positive for COVID, and Norvell used that as a way of canceling the game. We offered to play Sunday and Monday, and he kept saying no, so it just got canceled. That was, I think Trevor Lawrence was still at Clemson, so it looked like they were going to get annihilated. And I think Norvell used that as an excuse to not have to play the game, and it ended up costing us like $200,000 in hotels and flights and all kinds of stuff. And then he just sent us home without a game. So there's a little thing about that. But I would say this: against Durham, we were killing them. And then in the mid to late third quarter, we pulled all the starters and started playing second, third stringers. And NC State outscored us, I think, 21-0 in the fourth quarter. So I might, if we are up big on FSU late third quarter, I might be looking for a live bet on FSU coming back the other way to make some points back in the end against our backups.
Hey, thanks for the question, Chris. Next up, we got Nick Sod from YouTube. He's asking about Georgia. Is there any possible letdown against Auburn?
Smooth Andy?
Yeah,
it's a dream crusher game, right?
It is, but and there's another thing, which is the same thing I mentioned earlier about Alabama being a top 5 versus top 5 game last week and then coming into this week. The team that loses that game also tends to not cover the following week. You could say maybe it's physical brutality of the game and carrying that into the next week, and you're all sore and beat up because you had just had a big fight. It's a dream crusher to your point, but both teams who played a top 5 opponent in the same game, they tend to not cover the next week. It's probably just a physical toll. So I've got Vanderbilt today, and I do have Auburn. Both of them just two indicators on each game, but it's good enough.
Yeah, totally agree. I would like the Vanderbilt game a lot more if it were a noon Eastern kickoff. That's such a sleepy game. Vanderbilt, it's like a high school stadium. There's maybe 5,000 people in attendance. Nobody cares. You can't get really hyped up after that after you're watching 100,000 people go crazy over Georgia. But at 3:30, Bama's probably going to wake up, so I stayed away from that one. This game is another game I'm going to regret taking off the board because I had Auburn. Another game. I'll tell you what, if I do well in the noon games, I'm probably going to add this one, and I'm probably going to add the first half because Georgia notoriously starts slow. At least they have been this year, and it is a great first half play to take Auburn in this one. So that's probably where I'd lean. Probably do. I just think that it'd be Auburn nothing for me for this game.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nick. Dante, good to see you, man. He's asking about UConn over Temple, -17. Maybe not on your guys' radar, but
yeah, no. But if I did play it, UConn's play. Temple's terrible. Temple's bad. Smooth Andy, do you have any indicators on this game at all?
Nothing for me, but I've listened to VSiN in the mornings on Saturdays and Sundays. I just like to. They're on iHeartRadio now, and it's the Vegas Sports and Information Network. So it's just a bunch of gambling talk, and I like that much better than watching, say, the pregame game day stuff because those guys are, in my opinion, not particularly good. But we're talking about interviewing professional gamblers. A lot of those guys liked UConn today. They interview professional gamblers or come on and give their picks and all that kind of stuff. And there were 2 or 3 of them that had Connecticut. Nobody had Temple. So that seems to be a good play.
Not unless you're taking your life in your own hands. That would be like incredibly contrarian to the point of just silliness at that point because Temple is a bad team. But yeah, good question though.
Yep.
Another one I thought of. It made I kind of start off with initial 30 games I like, then I cut it to about 20, and I get it down to the final 8 or 9 games, and it got down to it was on my initial 30 board.
Sweet. Dante and Sir Bradham both have questions about Pitt UNC, both the side and the total.
Smooth Andy, any thoughts about this one being an ACC game?
UNC against what?
Yeah, it's Pitt.
There
-2.5 on the road at UNC. Totals, I think 62.5.
Yeah, I'm seeing 85% on Pitt according to Don Best. They are 4-0. North Carolina hasn't looked very good this year. They're at home. Was it last week that Mac Brown was talking about retiring or something, or was asked about
a couple weeks ago when they got blown out by James Madison?
Did they play last week
when we were in Vegas?
Yeah, did they play last week, or do you remember?
I think they played, but I don't remember the score.
Okay, I would have said if that was the week after that, I would expect North Carolina maybe to come out and say, "All right, let's put a stop to that."
Yeah.
Other than that, just the fact that everybody's on Pittsburgh makes me want to take North Carolina, as you know. Home dogs are great too. So there you go.
They did come out last week. They were at Duke. They lost by 1 point.
Oh, okay.
21-20.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they did come out and play. To your point, didn't quite make it. Look, I have no thoughts about the side on that one at all. But the total, if I leaned anything, it'd be over. But again, it was just because they got decimated by James Madison. I didn't even make my board of 30 to initially start the game. There are better people that are more informed on that game than I am. I'm just not.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the questions, guys. We'll take one more. We got Big Play Sports on Twitter. Louisiana versus Southern Miss.
Lord, I mean, for me, it almost made my board of 30. If I were playing anything, I'd play Louisiana -9. They should cover that one, but I left it alone. I didn't. I mean, it didn't make my board of 30, but it was a thought when I was making my board of 30 if I was going to add that one, but I didn't. Smooth Andy, any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I would say if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And if you're betting on Ole Miss, Louisiana, you might have a gambling problem. But you maybe have some insider information. You've watched them a lot. Yeah, I have no opinion. That one didn't pop up at all for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just a joke about the gambling problem. Obviously, betting on small games like this is actually a very good
Dude,
idea.
Andy, I know that you're watching Southern Miss film on Monday and Tuesday going into the winter.
Yeah.
Look, man. I mean, there's sometimes when can't sleep and a rerun of Louisiana and Southern Miss. Those games are on, and you throw it up there just because you're jonesing for some sports. But no, it just I looked at it, thought about it, didn't make my big board. But if I were playing, I'd play Louisiana.
Pretty funny. All right. Well, thanks for the questions, everyone. Uncle Phil, Smooth Andy. Any final thoughts before we take off here?
Smooth Andy?
Just kind of a disappointing week in terms of indicators and everything and showing up, but I'm hoping to get back in good standing with my college bets. I'm a little bit under 500 this year. I'm way over 500 in NFL, so that's been where I've been doing it. I need to turn the corner. Maybe some weak, lukewarm bets are going to be what does it for me, so we'll see.
Yeah. Excited about this week. I like this week. Seems like college I'm seeing pretty well. I've won 4 out of the first 5 weekends in college. I'm 63% overall, but on the 4 weeks that I've won 73% of my bets. So almost 3 out of 4 bets that I'm placing on the weeks that I win, I'm actually doing very well. So I'm excited about today, and let's get off to a good start, guys. As always, guys, let's roll.
Soundstripe.